Today's AskReddit post. The last US constitutional amendment was passed in 1992, almost 32 years ago. If you were granted the power to pass a new amendment, what would it be? Oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. Let's get started. Senate and House cannot trade on the stock market. Seriously? How is that not insider trading? Or any other high government position? They can put their stuff in the hands of other people to manage. This is how it works in the UK. Senior government officials can invest, but it is done inside a blind trust managed by somebody else. The client is not allowed to know precisely what the money is invested in. The problem is that this doesn't always apply to their spouses, particularly if the spouse is not domiciled in the UK, as in the case of our current PM. Congress must abide by the laws they set. They cannot vote themselves exempt. Fines and other penalties double as well. Breaking the law while in office should be considered treason and punished as such. You aren't just any person. You're a leader who's been placed there for the benefit of the people you represent. Breaking the law, knowingly or unknowingly, should be considered treason. If you're going to make the laws, you better damn well know what the laws are. Making your digital data part of your private property. Data ownership is so sadly overlooked, and we just let big corporations do whatever they want. It would be a whole different ball game if they were forced to compensate us for that data and the downstream income it produces for them. Basically, there will no longer be free social media companies. If you want Facebook or something like that, you will need to pay for it. The last constitutional amendment passed was 1971. 1992 was the last time an amendment was ratified and added to the Constitution. There is a major difference between passed and ratified. It was submitted in 1789 and ratified by 5 states, which fell short of the majority needed for it to take effect. Roll back Citizens United and get dark money out of politics. This is the truly needed amendment. Shit has been going downhill for 45 years, but the avalanche started with this poopty Scottish decision. An explicit right to privacy and decency. Fourth Amendment doesn't go far enough. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. No, it does. They just ignore it. I would argue it's not even governments which are at issue here, but corporations, though at this point. Who the duck can tell the difference? All officer holders who accept corporate campaign contributions must wear them on their exterior garments. You want to be a paid spokesman? Fine, wear it on your sleeve like an AskReddit driver. Straight out of Idiocracy. Brought to you by Carl's Jr. No member of the federal legislative, judicial, or executive branch may purchase, transfer, or sell private or public securities, bonds, or stocks. I would be fine with them owning mutual funds and the like. Just no individual stocks/securities. Provided it was a broad index, it wouldn't be too bad. But ideally, members of Congress should have securities in a blind trust. Some of you don't understand why something is an amendment vs just a federal law. This is Reddit. Does anyone here really understand anything? I guess I have to go research Citizens United, because apparently Reddit has been characterizing it incorrectly for years. After reading some of these suggestions, it makes me realize we have the government we have because some of you are idiots. I know, haha. You get one amendment. What do people choose? To prevent Congress from buying stocks. Jesus. You don't even need an amendment for that. You do if you don't want it to get gutted within a few years by further legislation. Take money out of politics. Almost all the other issues here are caused because the rich can drop a couple million into a campaign and thus buy votes in the Senate and House. Reverse Citizens United. I think Citizens United is the correct interpretation of the Constitution. I also think that we should have a constitutional amendment changing that. Ending gerrymandering. No foreign nationals nor corporations of any kind are allowed to donate money to political action committees or people running for office. Executive orders expire after 12 months, unless Congress codifies them into law. Fascinating idea. Allows for some ability of government to respond to emergent situations. Limits the scope of any potential damage. And if it's a winner, pass it into law. Good one. Age limits for all Congress people. President and Supreme Court set to 65. We should not be ruled by a gerontocracy. I like this, since the laws they are writing in just a few years won't even affect them anymore. Meanwhile, someone in their 20s will have to deal with it for decades. Watching these old men vote on laws they don't have to worry about, but I do as a 22-year-old is not fun. That I get to make a million more amendments. This guy amends. Term limits for Congress. My state has term limits for the legislators. It sounds way better in theory than it ends up working out in practice. It transfers power from the legislature to the executive and special interests. Right to self. You have the right to all things, administered or altered about yourself. The government can't prevent you from tattooing yourself, cutting your hair, cutting your limbs off should you choose, gender affirmant, plastic surgery, abortion where the child is not currently in a state to live without further growth from the mother, i.e. no third trimester as preemies can survive, doing drugs to alter your consciousness, choosing alternative medicine, etc. Alternatively, the government wouldn't be able to force tattoos, or vaccinations, or unwanted surgeries, or anything into or onto your body without your consent. Also, children should be protected from unnecessary genital mutilation such as FGM and circumcision, as well as reaffirming laws like no tattooing children, and maybe even no piercings. I've yet to see baby gauges, but it's only a matter of time. School budgets are no longer tied to property tax. I'm intrigued. What do you think would be a good alternative to fund public schools? Asking because my kid is in a rural school with very low budget and we keep losing teachers to neighboring districts with more housing that pay better. Like the other said, based on population, although needs should also be considered. A school with a large ESL population may need more resources. There should also be a way to get additional funds, if they are needed, that could be used for repairs, or maybe, if the school wants to develop a specific program or fund after school programs. No presidential immunity. Absolutely not. The idea that anyone, for any reason, could be immune to prosecution for crimes they committed is ludicrous. Free pizza every Friday. Maximum of 3 toppings. Term limit / age limit on all elected politicians. Every law passed in the future needs to address only a single issue. You cannot shove 32 different things into one bill, like we do today, hidden by a cool name like the Patriot Act. A few people are saying they'd abolish the Electoral College, and that would be one of my top answers as well. Another thing I'd consider adding to the Constitution is to have it lay out an objective algorithmic method to creating voting districts nationwide, in order to eliminate political gerrymandering. Since we are making a big election amendment, my contribution would be a system other than first past the post for electing candidates. Maybe ranked choice for single offices, like president, and some sort of proportional system for bodies like Congress. I'd have to consult a professional game theorist. Some way to allow people to vote for other parties without throwing their vote away. And campaign finance reform. Let's legislate our way beyond Citizens United. Thank God no one on Reddit has any power. Holy poop. I have rarely seen such a fine collection of misguided solutions to misunderstood problems. For real. Every amendment can have dramatic unintended consequences. For good or bad. The 14th Amendment that's so helpful today for immigrant children to obtain citizenship was written for slaves, not them. The 27th Amendment prevents Congress from changing their own pay until the next election. Sounds great, but it was used to prevent a hypothetical law that would have stopped them from getting paid during government shutdowns, forcing them to actually do their jobs. No more income tax withholding. Instead, the amount normally deducted is placed in a high-yield savings account. You pocket the interest made, and your bill is due on election day. The bill for the exact amount is sent directly from the eyes. And TurboTax, H&R Block and all the other pay me to find out what your tax bill is. Companies can go duck themselves. For that last sentence, you have no reason to use any of those services. Even with a small LLC/sole proprietorship. Free Tax USA. I do all my LLC taxes myself. I've probably ducked up, but since it's on the order of hundreds, and would clearly be the result of incompetence, I'm not worried. Equal Rights Amendment. Like you would add the existing era to the Constitution officially, or you would make a new one. Term limits for congressmen, senators, and judges. Senate, congressional, and legislative term limits. National vote by mail and rank choice for all federal level elections. The end. An amendment introducing term limits for Congress members would be my choice. It aims to inject new thoughts and reduce career politics, potentially curbing corruption and making governance more attuned to present-day challenges. This has been debunked for years. Term limits on all elected federal offices. You get one term of 6 years. President and Congress. Each 2 years, 1/3 of the House and Senate are up for re-election. If you really want to actually help the country and its people, you need to concentrate on that and that alone. Not fundraising, getting re-elected, or doing something that will piss off your donors. That would fix a lot of the corruption, but not all of it. The counter I've heard to this is that, since your elected officials don't have time to become seasoned lawmakers, the real power of the office will move to the congressional staff, aides, etc., who aren't elected at all. They'll be the ones who know how to get things done, so they'll be the ones that have to be satisfied. I don't know enough about the inner workings of politics to evaluate whether that change would be a net positive or negative. Foreign corporations cannot buy residential real estate. Massive voting rights reform, automatic registration, voting day is a national holiday, etc. Close bracket. Needs to have something about identifying the voter to an ID for audit purposes. There shouldn't be any room for someone to say an election is stolen. National ranked choice voting with removal of the Electoral College. I'd be okay with this option. The people just removing the Electoral College aren't really fixing anything, just changing things. Eliminating the Electoral College would mean it would be impossible for someone to win the presidency with a minority vote. That's a huge change. That the people, and only the people, can initiate and pass new amendments via popular vote. There are so many things we agree on. Campaign finance, controlling healthcare costs, term limits that Congress won't touch. 2-part. 1. Any elected government official residing in the House, Senate, White House, and/or Supreme Court cannot trade stocks/ETFs. 2. Anyone found in breach of this, or found liable in any felony criminal activity, is ineligible to run for office in any available/all federal roles. No person, up to and including the president, is immune from prosecution for crimes committed while doing their job. This also gets rid of qualified immunity for cops. Non-serious answer. Required cheese minimums at taco places. People shouldn't have to pay 70 extra cents to just get a normal amount of cheese. Serious answer. I'd probably gun for wages. CS and shareholders are siphoning way too much from laborers, and none of them are worth what they are taking. I'd like to live in a world with wage maximums for CEOs and protections for laborers against shareholders, which isn't a conversation happening enough. First of all, normal amount of cheese is a serious matter, and I take offense to people who think otherwise. Age cap on president. Term limits for all politicians, federal/state/city/town/borough/dog catcher. This has been tried in places. but fails in practice unfortunately. All this change does is empower the lobbyists and the big money interests they represent. This is because the people who are most in need of lobbyist cash and most susceptible to them are freshman politicians, since they tend to lose elections the most out of all incumbent politicians. Long-time politicians, by contrast, are better able to say no to lobbyists and still keep their job. Explicit right to privacy and body autonomy. It seems like at the same time 1994 our elected representatives stopped being interested in governing. Lol. The 27th Amendment was only ratified because a college student wrote an essay saying the amendment, originally part of the Bill of Rights, never had a deadline. The student went on a nationwide campaign to get it ratified, and his university eventually changed his course grade to an A once it was ratified. Any of these overturn Citizens United, term limits for Congress, SCOTUS, healthcare is a right, putting a cap on campaign contributions as well as a cap on lobbying, the right to repair your stuff easily that you paid for. Corporations are not people. Money isn't speech. Ban political parties. Every elected official has to stand on their own merits. I get why you're saying that, but I'd be scared of dark money funding candidates that sound good but have never actually been vetted, like George Santos. Something needs to be done about certain segments of the news media. If the news media didn't need ratings, then I think all the outrage, fear and hate we hear every day would disappear and our division would vanish. How do you write that amendment? You don't. But what you could do is extend the FCC's regulatory authority over cable and the internet. The reason the FCC could ensure non-partisan, not-for-profit news for so long is because the FCC has authority over the airwaves, which are a publicly owned space. Physical lines underground, owned by people, are not covered, though I suppose you could try, but likely fail, to make an argument that anything that emits an M-filed is intruding on the public airwaves. Technically correct, but not something a court is gonna support on its own. That being said, the news will always have a look at this problem. Someone should fix it. Bias that will always be argued as being partisan even when it's not. Bro, you actually watched the whole video. I'd give you a high five if I was a human. Make sure to click the like button and subscribe for more great content. See you next time.